The sun rises slowly over the wide plains of Mesopotamia. A golden shimmer spreads across the horizon, touching the twin rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates. From afar, a city awakens towers, glinting like molten bronze walls, painted with deep blue glaze, and lions of gold roaring silently from every gate. The air hums with the sounds of merchants calling, camels grunting, and flutes singing their morning songs. The scent of incense drifts from open temples. They called it the city of heaven on earth, but history would remember it as the city of sins. Babylon, a name that still echoes across thousands of years, was once the heart of the world. It rose from the desert like a miracle of human ambition, a place where power, beauty, and faith collided. Here, kings dreamed of eternity, priests whispered to gods carved from stone, scholars studied the stars believing they could read the will of heaven. And yet hidden beneath that brilliance was something darker, a pride so vast it could challenge the divine. To understand Babylon is to travel backward through the river of time to a place where civilization was being born. Listen, and you can almost hear the voices of its people, the chants of priests in white robes, the rhythmic beating of drums during sacred processions, the laughter from markets overflowing with spices and silk. The city was alive, bold, restless, unstoppable. At the heart of this mighty kingdom stood one man whose words carved the very foundation of justice, Hammurabi. He was not merely a ruler, he was a visionary who believed that order was divine. His laws, etched into stone, declared the first known code of human civilization. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, the people said, not as cruelty but as balance. Under his rule, Babylon thrived in discipline and prosperity. The city became the mirror of his ambition, precise, strong, and proud. But the story of Babylon did not end with Hammurabi. Centuries later, another name would rise, one that would redefine the meaning of glory, Nebuchadnezzar II. He was a builder, a dreamer, and a conqueror. Under his reign, Babylon reached its greatest height, not just in power, but in imagination. He raised walls so tall they touched the sky gates, so magnificent they were said to blind the Sunday. And for his beloved queen, he created a wonder the world had never seen: a garden that floated in the air, a cascade of green amid the sands, the hanging gardens of Babylon. Imagine walking through its streets, soldiers in gleaming armor, scribes recording the wisdom of the gods on clay tablets, the laughter of children echoing through courtyards lined with palm trees. Every inch of Babylon pulsed with life and glory. The people believed their city was eternal, blessed by the gods themselves. And yet behind the beauty, behind the music and the perfume, something began to stir. The walls that glowed with gold would one day cast shadows of arrogance. The hearts that once worshipped gods with humility would soon bow only to themselves. The narrator's voice lowers like a whisper before a storm. Behind the walls, covered in blue glaze and golden lions, a story of arrogance and downfall was being written. It is a tale as old as civilization itself, when power blinds, when faith turns to pride, and when greatness invites its own destruction. The city that sought to touch heaven would one day crumble into dust, swallowed by the same sands that once witnessed its birth. But for now, in this first light of dawn, Babylon still shines. Its towers still sing to the sky, its priests still promise divine favor, and its kings still believe they are chosen by the gods. The city breathes with glory, unaware of the fate that awaits it beyond the horizon. As the sun climbs higher, the light strikes the golden lions of the Ishtar Gate, and they gleam like flames, fierce, untamed, eternal. And over this city, where human ambition dares to rival the heavens, the storyteller's voice rises once more, solemn and powerful. From divine glory to divine punishment, this is the story of Babylon, the city that defied heaven itself. The story of Babylon does not begin with gold, nor with glory. It begins with law. When the dust of early empires still hung heavy in the air, one man rose above chaos to carve order out of the wild heart of Mesopotamia. His name was Hammurabi, a ruler who believed that a kingdom without justice was no kingdom at all. Under the burning sun, he built not just temples and walls, but the idea of civilization itself. Babylon in his time was smaller than the sprawling wonder it would later become. Yet it was already a gem in the desert, a city that shimmered with promise. The Euphrates flowed beside it like a silver serpent, carrying trade, knowledge, and life. Around it, the plains of Sumer and Akkad stretched endlessly, but Babylon stood apart, a city guided by law instead of fear. Hammurabi was not the kind of king who ruled from shadows. He walked among his people, speaking with merchants and the market judges, in the courts and priests in the temples. They say his voice was calm but unshakable, his gaze sharp as the edge of a blade. When disputes arose, he listened, and then he spoke the words that would change the world forever. Let justice be the foundation upon which Babylon stands. Soon after, slabs of black stone appeared throughout the city, engraved with words no one dared ignore. The Code of Hammurabi, carved into basalt, spoke of fairness, retribution, and divine order. It was both law and prophecy, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a balance between punishment and mercy, between the gods and men. In those lines, the heartbeat of Babylon found its rhythm. Under this order, the city flourished. Streets were widened, canals were dug to tame the floodwaters of the Euphrates. Farms thrived, their fields green and full. Babylon became a hub of knowledge. In the shadow of ziggurats, scribes pressed cuneiform tablets into clay, recording the motions of stars, the measurements of time, the secrets of medicine and trade. By night, the sky above Babylon shimmered with constellations. The priests of Marduk, the city's chief deity, would climb the temple towers to study the heavens. They believed the stars were not mere lights, but messages from the divine. If the moon turns red, one whispered to another, the king must offer prayers for heaven, watches the hearts of men. The people believed them. They lived under the gaze of gods, not in fear, but in faith. Babylon in Hammurabi's day was a living mosaic, merchants shouting in the markets, potters shaping clay, children playing near temple steps. The air was filled with the rhythm of daily life, structured and safe. For the first time in Mesopotamia, citizens could walk without dread, knowing that even the poorest man could seek justice in the name of the king. But as Hammurabi grew older, he began to sense something deeper, stirring beneath the surface of his perfect city. Power, that intoxicating force, was beginning to settle like dust in every corner. He knew it, and sometimes in the quiet of his palace he would look toward the horizon and whisper to the gods, "May those who come after me remember not only my strength, but my restraint." His words, like his laws, were carved into time itself. And yet history has a way of forgetting warnings even when they are written in stone. After Hammurabi's death in 1750 BC, the balance he fought so hard to preserve began to tremble. His descendants lacked his vision, his courage, his understanding that justice must stand above pride. Babylon survived, it always did, but the pulse of ambition beat louder than the voice of humility. Still, Hammurabi's legacy endured. The code he forged spread beyond Babylon's walls, influencing kingdoms that had yet to be born. It reached the minds of rulers, scholars, and dreamers across centuries. His city, once a small beacon in the sands, became the heart of an empire that would one day make the world kneel. The narrator's tone deepens, warm yet solemn. They believed their power was eternal. But every empire that forgets humility writes its own tragedy. The sound of the river fades. The sun dips low. Time moves forward, centuries pass like shadows across stone. The world changes, kings rise and fall, and Babylon waits to be reborn. Then, out of the silence, a new name begins to echo through history. A name that will turn Babylon from a city of order into a symbol of divine splendor, Nebuchadnezzar II. A pause. The storyteller's voice grows distant, reverent, filled with awe. Centuries later, another ruler would take Babylon to heights never seen before. Centuries had passed since Hammurabi's voice faded into the wind, but Babylon did not sleep. It waited, patient, proud, until another ruler came to lift it higher than any city before or after. His name thundered through time, Nebuchadnezzar II, the Dreamer King, the builder of miracles. Under his reign, Babylon became the crown jewel of the ancient world, Rome before Rome, New York before New York. When travelers approached its walls, they did not see a city. They saw a vision. The Ishtar Gate, shimmering in blue and gold, rose like a mountain of glory. Rows of lions, dragons, and bulls, sacred to the gods, seemed alive in the morning light. Each brick bore his name. The streets leading through the gate stretched straight and grand, paved with limestone that gleamed beneath the Sunday priests, soldiers, and merchants walked upon it as though walking on heaven's floor. Nebuchadnezzar would stand upon his balcony overlooking the Euphrates, his eyes tracing the glittering spires and temple domes. His voice carried over the wind, "Let the gods see Babylon and envy its beauty." His advisors bowed, but behind their reverence hid unease. They knew his hunger was not for peace or piety, but for eternity. By his command, Babylon reached its zenith. Temples to Marduk, the supreme god, towered into the sky, their walls covered in gold and lapis lazuli. Inside, statues of the gods stood taller than men, their faces calm, their eyes made of precious gems that caught the torchlight and seemed to breathe. And then there was his masterpiece, the Hanging Gardens. They said he built them for his queen, who longed for the green mountains of her homeland, but others whispered he built them for himself to prove he could rival the work of creation itself. Terraces of stone and cedar rose layer by layer, overflowing with vines, roses, and palms. Water flowed down from hidden aqueducts, shimmering like liquid glass under the Babylonian Sunday. The storyteller's tone swells bright and cinematic. Imagine walking beneath those gardens. You'd hear the trickle of waterfalls mixing with the music of flutes, the laughter of nobles echoing across marbled halls. You'd smell jasmine myrrh and roasted dates carried by the wind. Babylon was alive, radiant, a paradise built by mortal hands. During the festival of Ishtar, the city pulsed like a living heart. Torches lit the night, painting the streets in gold and red. Dancers moved to the beat of drums, while priests chanted hymns to the goddess of love and war. Wine flowed freely, laughter filled the air, and the scent of incense rose like a veil between heaven and earth. Nebuchadnezzar watched from his throne, proud, silent, enthralled by his own creation. His closest counselor, old and weary, stepped forward. "Counselor, my king, the gods have blessed Babylon beyond measure. Should we not offer thanks before we seek to surpass them?" Nebuchadnezzar, "Offer thanks, no. Let them watch. Let them know that men can build what even gods desire." His words hung heavy in the air, bold as thunder. The narrator lowers his tone, but envy, even divine, always comes with a price. As the years passed, Babylon's glory grew, and so did its shadow. The people began to see themselves not as servants of heaven, but as equals to it. Temples grew larger, feasts grew louder, and humility faded like dust in the wind. Wealth poured into the city from conquered lands, gold from Persia, ivory from Africa, spices from India. The streets overflowed with luxury, but also with whispers. Whispers that the king had grown restless, haunted by dreams of a statue with feet of clay, a vision of empire destined to crumble. Yet when dawn came, he pushed the fear aside and commanded new towers to rise. "Build higher," he said. "Make Babylon eternal." His workers obeyed, and the city climbed toward the clouds, a monument to human ambition. From the riverbanks, Babylon looked unstoppable. Palaces glittered like fire, ziggurats pierced the sky, and the hanging gardens swayed above them all like a living crown. But even as its beauty reached perfection, a faint tremor began, unseen, unheard, deep within the heart of its people. Pride had taken root, and pride never sleeps. The narrator's voice turned somber. The higher Babylon rose, the deeper its shadow became. The music fades, leaving only the sound of wind brushing against the golden walls. The storyteller pauses as if gazing beyond the horizon, and soon within those shining streets, the seeds of sin would begin to bloom. But as Babylon's towers rose higher, the spirit that once gave them meaning began to fade. The gardens still bloomed, the temples still glittered, but the faith that had built them, the reverence that once bound the city together, was slowly being sold, traded, and forgotten. By the time of Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon had become a shell of its former self, radiant on the outside, rotten within. What had once been a city of divine wonder had turned into a market of indulgence, where gold spoke louder than gods, and pleasure was worshipped more than prayer. The nights stretched endlessly, filled with laughter that hid emptiness. The smell of wine clung to the air like a ghost. The great festivals of Ishtar, once sacred celebrations of fertility and renewal, had become spectacles of vanity, a theater of desire. Inside the temples, the chants that once called down blessings now competed with the music of harps and drums. Merchants sold holy favors, priests auctioned miracles, and the sacred dances of Ishtar blurred into something profane. The narrator's tone lowers almost in grief. Faith turned into desire, and worship became sin. On the grand avenues, nobles flaunted their jewels, while beggars starved in the shadows of palaces. Corruption moved through the government like a serpent, through tall grass unseen but always near. Bribes determined justice, greed replaced duty, and even the statues of gods seemed to frown in silence. Babylon had lost its soul, yet its people were blind to it, drunk on their own illusion of greatness. At the heart of this decaying empire sat King Belshazzar, proud heir to his grandfather's glory and prisoner of his own arrogance. He was a man who feared nothing, not prophecy, not enemy, not heaven. To him, Babylon was untouchable, immortal, and so on one infamous night he called for a feast the grandest the world had ever seen. The scene opens with the roar of 1,000 voices echoing through the palace halls. Torches burned like miniature suns, casting gold light across marble floors. Servants poured wine into goblets made of gold, plundered from the Temple of Jerusalem itself. Sacred vessels turned into toys for amusement. Musicians played dancers, twirled and laughter thundered louder than prayer. The narrator's tone swells the imagery vivid and cinematic. The king sat upon his throne, his eyes gleaming with drunken pride. He raised his goblet high, shouting, "Drink for the gods of gold, of silver, of bronze, for Babylon, eternal and untamed." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices blending with the music until it felt like the whole palace trembled. But in the midst of that revelry, in the instant between pride and silence, something changed. The torches flickered. The laughter faltered. A hush fell over the hall. And then, without warning, a light, pale, cold, otherworldly appeared on the far wall. A hand. Just a hand. It moved slowly, deliberately, tracing fiery letters upon the stone. The music stopped. The dancers froze. Even the wine turned bitter on their tongues. The letters burned, glowing with impossible brilliance. Mene mene tekel upharsin. Belshazzar's goblet slipped from his hand, shattering against the marble. His voice cracked. "Belshazzar, what? What does it mean?" No one answered. His counselors trembled. The priests fell silent. Even the air seemed to recoil. Finally, one old scholar stepped forward, his face as pale as the writing itself. "Scholar, it means, my king, your days are numbered. You have been weighed and found wanting. Your kingdom will be divided." The hall erupted in panic. Belshazzar's crown slipped from his head. His breath quickened for the first time. The man who feared nothing was staring into the face of judgment. The narrator's voice deepens, steady and somber, and in that moment, Babylon, the city that defied heaven, felt the shadow of its own end. Outside the palace walls, the Euphrates flowed quietly under the moonlight, unaware of the terror inside. Yet beyond the riverbanks in the dark distance, the armies of Persia were already moving. The final act of Babylon's story had begun. As the night stretched on, the laughter was gone, replaced by whispers and the sound of trembling. The golden walls still shone, but their light no longer inspired awe, only fear. The storyteller pauses, letting the silence linger before closing in a whisper. It was the night Babylon's fate was sealed. The night that sealed Babylon's fate bled quietly into dawn. The city still stood proud, golden, untouched by flame, but inside its walls something had already died. Belshazzar was gone. His laughter had faded into the silence of marble halls, and the writing on the wall still glowed faintly in the memories of those who saw it. Outside the city, under a pale moon, the Persian army waited. Their leader, Cyrus the Great, was a man unlike any Babylon had faced, calm, disciplined, and patient. He did not attack with fire or fury. He attacked with silence. Far from the city gates, his engineers worked by torchlight, diverting the Euphrates River that once guarded Babylon like a living moat. Slowly, the mighty current bent, trickling into the sand, until the riverbed ran shallow and dry. Through that quiet path, the soldiers of Persia walked unseen, unheard. There were no screams, no clash of swords. Only the soft shuffle of sandals on wet earth, the whisper of water and the sigh of destiny closing its hand. By morning, Babylon had fallen. The narrator's tone turned slow and reverent. The city of sins was silent. The mighty walls stood, but the spirit of Babylon had already fallen. Inside the palace, the golden goblets lay scattered, overturned by the night's chaos. The air still smelled faintly of incense and wine, but the laughter that once filled those chambers would never return. The city that defied heaven had met its end, not with thunder but with silence, the most merciful kind of punishment. For a time the Persians spared its beauty. Cyrus ordered that the temples remain, that the gardens not be burned, yet no decree could save what Babylon had lost. A city may survive its conqueror, but never its own arrogance. And so as the sun rose over the once mighty capital, its light revealed more than ruins. It revealed a lesson written across time itself: pride. The same force that builds empires also destroys them. The voice of the storyteller grows softer, more personal. They believe their power was eternal, but every empire that forgets humility writes its own tragedy. Centuries would pass, the rivers would shift. Sand would cover the stones, and Babylon's name would turn to legend. Travelers would walk its empty roads and speak of a city cursed by its own brilliance. And yet, even in ruin, Babylon whispered a warning, a memory, a mirror. Because the story of Babylon is not just about a city. It's about us. It's about how we build towers that scrape the heavens, then forget the ground beneath our feet. It's about how every generation believes it is too advanced, too powerful, too wise to fall until the cracks begin to show. The narrator's tone deepens, reflective but warm. Look around. The towers are higher now, the lights brighter, the world louder. But the same pride that once lived behind Babylon's golden walls still breathes within our own. There's a pause, the kind that lingers like a heartbeat. Perhaps Babylon never truly died. It lives in every empire that believes it can rise above the heavens. The wind returns soft and distant. You can almost hear it sweeping across the ruins, through broken gates, over forgotten altars, carrying echoes of laughter prayers and the faint hum of a world that once thought itself immortal. History, it seems, never shouts its lessons. It whispers them. In the ruins of Babylon, in the fall of empires, in the choices we make today. The narrator's voice grows stronger now, resonant and clear. A final call, not of fear, but of remembrance. If you believe history still whispers its warnings, share this story before it repeats itself. A moment of silence follows, then the faint sound of wind through stone, the echo of water flowing once more where the river once ran. The image fades, leaving only the lingering words spoken almost in a breath. Babylon, the city that defied heaven and paid the price.